Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name's Amy, and I'm the Digital Content Manager here at MorePay. Today's topic is statutory maternity pay. Some of you may have joined our maternity leave webinar recently, so that was the HR Essentials. This is the Payroll Essentials webinar, so we are being joined by our payroll expert, Fiona. Before we hand over to Fiona, there's a few things to cover. So first up, how to ask a question. So if you'd like to ask Fiona a question in the live Q&A, you can do so using the question panel shown here. We've got lots of people registered for today. I think we've had about 1,200 and I can see people joining quickly. So we've got hundreds of people on and I'm suspecting that because it's a complex topic, we're going to get lots of questions. So I'm not sure Fiona will get to them all, but she'll do her best to get to as many as she can. Don't worry too much if you're facing any technical issues at your side. The webinar session is being recorded and I will send you that video link later on today. There's actually lots in the webinar today, which I'll tell you about in a second. So we'll make sure that we share the slides as well. So that will be in your inbox later today. Hopefully there's no technical issues at our side. If there are, then I will do my best to fix them, but hopefully it won't come to that. Okay, so the agenda for today, it is packed. We have got, I think, the most slides we've ever had for a webinar before. I think there's about 30 slides, so brace yourselves because there's lots to cover. Fiona wanted it to be very comprehensive, which it definitely is. So I'm thinking we can do it in the hour, but we may need to go slightly over. So don't worry too much if you've got a hard stop at 11, because as mentioned, the session's being recorded, so anything that you miss, you can catch up on later. Just a very quick note on MorePay for those of you who haven't joined a webinar before or perhaps don't know who we are. We provide payroll and HR software as well as managed services to UK businesses. We've been around for 50 years now, and you can see some of our loyal customer brands on this slide. And one more thing to mention, we've recently launched our next generation payroll and HR software, which we're very excited about. It's easy to use, easy to access, easy to trust, and I could speak for days on all of this, but I'm not going to because we want to get cracking with the topic for today. But if you would like some more information about our next generation payroll and HR software, then please drop me a message in the question panel and I'll be happy to send you a bit more info. So enough about us, you're all here to hear about statutory maternity pay. So our presenter for today, Fiona Lu-Hilson, is going to be covering that. She is our legislation business analyst. She joined us last year. She's got more than 2 decades of payroll industry experience, and she's done it all when it comes to payroll. And of course, she's CIPP qualified. And in addition to all of this, she's an absolute delight. Fiona, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Amy. Thank you very much for the intro.
You're very welcome. I'm going to hand over to you now.
Great. Amy sounds bubbly and happy in the morning. So same greeting to everyone and hope you have a good morning so far, and hope the webinar is not overwhelming you with our 30 pages, slides or everything. And most important is thank you very much for making time to attend this webinar. And I know Amy just mentioned we had a webinar regarding maternity from the HR perspective. And today we are concentrate on maternity leave and maternity pay from payroll perspective. I'm going to go through a few sections, eligibility, maternity leave, maternity pay, how to calculate maternity pay and average pay, and maternity-related benefit, including salary sacrifice. Maternity leave and pay is a very complicated subject. With today's webinar, I'm hoping to provide you with some useful information and practical tools and tips along with the statutory rules. Like Amy said, don't worry about it if you can't remember everything or certain areas you are not familiarized yourself, and she will send you the slides and the recording afterwards, and you can refer back any parts if you need to jog your memory or you need for a certain parts you need to refer back in the future. So let's start now. The first part is the eligibility. We're talking about the statutory maternity leave here. For employee to be eligible to have maternity leave, they need to be an employee, not a worker, not contractor, not the other means, and they give their employer the correct notice. It doesn't matter how long they worked for the employer, how many hours they work, or how much they are paid, they are entitled to maternity leave. Employee here, we noted the employee cannot get the statutory maternity leave. They have child through surrogacy. They could get a statutory adoption leave and pay instead. So next, let's have a look at the statutory maternity pay. The eligibility is employee must earn an average 120 for this year per week. This is LEL amount, which will increase to £123 next year per week. Employee need to provide correct notice and MAP-B1. Employee won't get maternity if they don't give their employer proof that baby is due. So the two key things for the employee need to inform employer is the MAP-B1, and they need to let employer know, and they need to have certain earning. The average earning really is for the employee must worked for employer for at least 26 weeks, continuing into the qualifying week. This is the 15th week before the expected week of childbirth. So this is important information. A lot of times, HR or payroll people think if this employee instantly entitled to maternity pay. You need to look the 26 week plus 15 week. This generally is employee needs to be in the employment for 41 weeks to be entitled to maternity pay. And of course, the earning threshold is here is for 120 per week, and next year will be 123 per week to be entitled to maternity pay. On the next page, it's about giving correct notice. From employee side, at least 15 weeks before the baby due date, employee must tell employer when the baby is due and they want to start maternity leave. The employee must give employer at least 28 days notice and for proof they are pregnant, which is MAP-B1. From employer side, is they must write to employee with 28 days confirm maternity start and end date. And if the employee is not eligible, the employer must give them a form SMP1 within 7 days. This part generally is done by HR department. Employee from payroll side, the payroll department need to know the MAP-B1, when is the baby due, and when employee intend to start maternity leave, the start date. Let's go next page. I want to show the MAP-B1 certificate. Generally, it has two sides. On the front is just the name of the person, and on the back, which this side is important to payroll department. Sometimes HR department just scan the front page to payroll. Without this side, it's no good for payroll side. You need the name of the employee, you need the baby due date, needs to be signed by midwife with a doctor stamp, and every other information like date of examining or signing, all of that. The midwife will fill this part in. For the early birth or losing a baby, employee can still get statutory maternity leave and SMP if the baby is born early, if stillborn after the start of the 24 week of pregnancy, or if the baby dies after being born, which is very sad case. let's have a look at the next page. I want to just briefly to show you the SMP1 form. If an employee is not eligible for the maternity pay, statutory maternity pay, then the payroll side needs to complete the SMP1 form. The generally is 4 pages with the part, to fill in the employee's information to say why I can't pay you, and the list of the reason why I can't pay you. It's generally from payroll side, it will say the average earning is not high enough, or you're not employed by me long enough, and obviously have different reasons underneath, like employee go to custody or things like that. So, and the last page is employer's name and signature and stamp or company stamp or things. This need to send to employee. So employee don't get statutory maternity pay from the employment, but they might still eligible to claim maternity pay from the DWP, which employee will need to complete a different form, is maternity allowance form. That is up to employee, but from payroll side, we need to produce SMP1 form. Okay, so let's go next. Here now we will talk about maternity leave, the statutory maternity leave. And statutory maternity leave have total 52 weeks, with the first 26 weeks is ordinary maternity leave, with the second 26 weeks is additional maternity leave. Generally, with the letter produced by HR department, they will be able to confirm from which date to which date is your ordinary maternity leave start and end, and which date is your additional maternity leave start and end. So for employee, you don't necessarily have to take 50 weeks, 52 weeks of leave, but you must take 2 weeks at least, and 4 weeks if you're working in a factory. This is the minimum of maternity leave you have to take before you start, say, shared parental leave, or before you say, I want to come back to work or anything. Generally, the date, like I said, for employees start and end, it will be confirmed by HR, send employee the letter. Now let's have a look at the next page. And we are having a look at the start date and early birth. The maternity, generally, the statutory maternity pay generally starts when employee take maternity leave. But in a lot of cases, when employee have holidays, employee will say, well, I want to have holiday before maternity start. So obviously they can't do that. However, if employees have baby born early, which we're talking about, the leave will also start the day after the baby, after the birth, if the baby is born early. If employees during the employee started to be off but on holiday, but maternity not started yet. However, the baby due early, then the maternity automatically start the day after the birth of the early born baby. The earliest employee can start maternity leave is 11 weeks before the expected week of childbirth. Bear in mind, the average earning calc is 15 weeks prior. The qualifying earning is 15 weeks go back to calc, which we will have more details talking later on. The maternity leave also will start automatically if employee is off work for pregnancy-related illness in the 4 weeks before the week that baby is due. We're talking about here, the midwife will assign a date of the baby's due date on the MAP B1, but in Inland Revenue's terms, it's always the week and always a week starts from Sunday's date, ends on Saturday's date. Just bear that in mind. So the last thing, if changing the date for return to work, is employee must give employer at least 8 weeks notice if they want to change the return to work date. Generally, employee will discuss this with HR department and talk to their line manager, whichever way is appropriate, before deciding which dates they come back. And next, we will talk about statutory maternity pay, which is the statutory maternity pay is generally 39 weeks. Employee can have leave 52 weeks, but only get paid 39 weeks. Out of these 39 weeks, the first 6 weeks is 90% of average earning, employee's average earning. The next 33 weeks is the weekly statutory pay amount is 151.97 for this year, and it is 156.66 for the next tax year, or 90% of employees' average weekly earning, which means if you're earning lower than this amount, like we said, employees entitled to statutory maternity pay if they're earning over £120 a week for this year. But maternity pay this year is 151.97. So if they're earning less, they only entitled to that less amount, not this higher amount. Let's have a look at next page is the average earning calc. I want to show the on this webinar to how to calculate the average earning. I know for payroll people, this is a standard thing, but with more pay clients, we deal with a lot of employees, less than 500 employees. Sometimes they don't necessarily have a payroll person on site, although, more pay is, if you are fully managed by more pay, they will do that part. But if not, this is a good tool to know how to calculate average earning. For weekly paid employees, the payment for the qualifying pay period are 8 weeks prior to the 15th week before expected week of childbirth. Like earlier on I mentioned, inland revenue is important talking about weeks, start from Sunday's date, end on Saturday's date. So when the Match B1 give you a date, whether it's Monday's date, Wednesday date, whichever, that week is counted as week 1. And then counting backwards 15 weeks, and whichever week date that end, and the 8 weeks prior those days is the qualifying pay period. We will give more example later on this today, so don't worry about that too much at this moment. Just try to get this in your head. For example, here I give is employees paid weekly, payday is Friday every week. So if the baby due date is 5th of May, if anybody on this webinar use your laptop, if you want to bring up the date, 5th of May, you will see 5th of May is Thursday's date. If this date is baby due, you're counting backwards. You can counting after today's webinar just to match the date. The 15th week before the 5th of May, it will be the week from 16th of January to 22nd of January. You will notice 16th of January is Sunday's date, 22nd is Saturday's date. This is, I always say, Sunday to Saturday's date. And the qualifying pay should be the 8 weeks of payments before week ending 22nd of January. Okay, now let's have a look at the next slide, which is monthly paid employees. The average earning calc for monthly paid employees, which is the payment, the 2 months, which is the equivalent of 8 weeks prior to the 15th week before expected week of childbirth. For example, the employee is paid monthly. Payday is 25th every month. We use the same baby's due date to say 5th of May, which is Thursday's date, and then you counting backwards the 15th week, which is the same week, 16th January to 22nd January. The qualifying pay for the 2 months would be the payments before 22nd of January. Employees pay 25th every month, which means the qualifying period would be November and December 2021. Means the payday of January, 25th January, is after the 22nd. So January's payment cannot be used as qualifying pay. This is how it goes. Here, it's worth to mention a lot of companies have occupational maternity pay, which is top up to 100%. So the occupational policy to top up, some companies say top up 6 weeks, some companies to 26 weeks. I want to stress is when we later on, we were talking about, say, some employees' average earning could be higher than their salary because they got paid bonus, because they got paid, referrals, or some employee working overtime. If that amount be higher than their 100%, they are entitled to that amount. I have in my working experience, experienced some company to say, no, they only top up to 100%. Even their average earning is already higher than 100%. We only top up to, the full pay. That's incorrect. If employees' average earning is way, way higher than they are 100% pay, so be it. That's their entitlement. The company policy cannot override statutory maternity rule. Here, I want to, stress that out. And we later on with employees' average pay, I will repeat this. Let's have a look at the next page. As the calculating average pay for the maternity, I give the example here with the calculation rules, which is the weekly paid employees, the qualifying week, which is the 15 weeks before the expected week of childbirth. We use the same scenario here, say the 8 weeks earning prior qualifying week. The earning here, I want to stress, is earnable pay with not gross pay, not taxable pay, although most time taxable pay and earnable pay is according to each other, but not all cases. So you need to consider employees' earnable pay with, if you're not sure with your company's pay elements set up, check with more pay, your payroll provider. If you're not more pay client, check with whoever is your payroll provider. If you're not sure which code is subject to NI or not. The 90% calculation rule is 8 weeks earnable total divided 8 weeks times 90%. And it's worth mentioning, if this amount is below weekly maternity standard amount, the lower amount applies. And with the monthly paid employee, is the same as the 2 months earning prior qualifying week, which is you use the 2 months earnable total divided 2 months divided 2, which is monthly figure, times 12, which is annual figure. You use the annual figure divided 52 weeks to get the weekly figure times 90%. So the goal is to try to reach weekly figure and then use the weekly figure applied to 90%. So if you're not sure, this is a calculation rule provided here for you. And if you employees monthly paid, or weekly paid or full weekly paid, the goal is to get to the weekly paid amount before you apply 90%. It's the same if the the average pay is lower, the 90% is lower than the standard maternity pay, the lower amount applies. So let's move to next page. I want to give some examples here. So if anybody's a bit confused or anything, you can refer back to this calculation, and I have different scenario provided. The first one is a weekly paid employee. Let's say Joanne is part-time employee, annual salary is 7,800. The qualifying 8 weeks unable prior, use the same payday if we say prior 22nd of January, if the baby due date is 5th of May, then the 8 weeks total is 1,100. You can see some week is less due to sickness or any reason. Employees' average pay, use the 1,100 divided 8, and it's the £137.50. The 90% workout on that is 123.75, and this amount is less than the standard weekly maternity pay, statutory maternity pay amount. Therefore, Joanne will receive weekly statutory maternity pay of 123.75, not the statutory pay weekly amount. This is example 1. On this page, I provided 3 scenarios, and the first one is the standard how to calculate employee's average pay when employee is monthly paid. Say Emily's annual salary is 18,000. For qualifying 2 months, which is use the same scenario if employee is baby due on 5th, and then the qualifying pay period say is November and December 2021. The month 1, I state here, is unable earning, is standard. The first month is 1,500. The second month, including some overtime, is 1,750. The employee's total of 2 months is 3,250. For you to get average pay, you need to use 3,250 divided 2 months and times 12 months. So divided 52 weeks. This is the weekly figure, 375. And the 90% average, therefore, is 337.50. So this will be the first 6 weeks of Joanne's statutory maternity pay, and the rest will be 151, whatever figure the statutory maternity pay for this year, and 156, whatever for next year. The example in the middle is same employee, Emily. In month 1 of her qualifying month, Emily received an ex gratia payment of 10,000, which brings her month 1 gross total to 11,500. Because the ex gratia payment is non-tax and non-NI payment, the maternity average earning calculation is only consider what is unable pay. Therefore, the ex gratia payment cannot be taken into account as the average pay calculation. So Emily's average calc in this scenario is exactly the same as on the left-hand side. The month 1 is 1,500 instead of 11,500. On the right-hand side, the example 3, say Emily again. This time she received 5,000 bonus in month 1 of her qualifying month, which brings her month 1 gross total to 6,500. So because this bonus pay is subject to tax and NI, and Emily's unable pay, therefore, in month 1 is 6,500. And month 2 is 1,500. Bring her total, the 2 months, is 8,250. Emily, therefore, the average weekly amount is 951.50. 86.92, and therefore the 90% is 856.73. So Emily should receive the first 6 weeks of her 90% average is 856.73. And then the rest will be 151 for whatever for this year and 156 whatever for next year. So this is just give you a scenario of what is enabled, what is not enabled, and what is taken into account, what's not taken into account. I hope this is clear. And let's go for next page. For calculating maternity pay, the inland revenue generally, like I mentioned, the maternity generally is weekly amount. Maternity pay used to be by inland revenue traditionally is only paid from Sunday state to Saturday state weekly every week, no matter when employees start maternity can only be paid like that. Nowadays it's totally different. Nowadays employee can demand to say, no, I'm going to start my maternity from Thursday, not have to be weekend. I'm going to start my maternity from Monday, whichever day. So if employee starts maternity from Thursday, then the week will run from Thursday to Wednesday. If employee decided to start maternity from Monday's date, then employee's maternity will run from Monday to Sunday. So as its roles. So maternity generally by weekly amount. So for weekly paid employees, they will receive their maternity weekly. For monthly paid employees, the SMP will be paid the however many week in that month. Say you start Monday's date, then we look at how many Sunday's date falls in that month. You will receive 4 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever in that month. The total number paid to employee will be 39 weeks. I give an example here to say Emily's want to start maternity leave on Sunday, 1st of May, 2022. Her maternity week will be from Sunday to Saturday, and there are 4 weeks in May 2022. She will therefore receive 4 weeks maternity pay in May, 4 weeks in June, 5 weeks in July, and so on. Her maternity week, nevertheless, will be 39 weeks total. However, this is not the iron rule not to be broke. Employees and company nowadays, this is the most common one. A lot of company to say, no, we're not doing this. We want employee being top up by monthly amount, monthly pay. Then all, payroll have to work by daily rate, top up to employees full pay per month. And then some company is comfortable, most company, this is the way to use to pay maternity pay. So when employees start maternity, employees say, hold on a minute, my maternity is supposed to be top up 100%, but I only received much less amount. Why is this? That means employee received 4 weeks. 4 weeks pay is not the same as whole month pay, especially you receive 90% of it as well. Or even with company top up to 100%, 4 weeks pay is still not as much as the whole month's pay. But on the 5 weeks month, you will receive more than your whole month's pay. So it's kind of even out. Like I say, the total will be 39 weeks. Let's have a look at the next page. Here is provided on Inland Revenue's website. Inland Revenue has so many different calculators. Maternity calculator is the link here. We provided it. You can easily use the HMRC maternity calculator because I believe a lot of HR departments simply use this calculator to calculate employees' maternity pay. As long as you know what information you need to put in, the payment should be enabled pay. This is very, very important. The qualifying pay period, as long as you know which pay period it is. But when you go through this link, it's actually Inland Revenue is very much prompt of what you need to do and the questions step by step. So I use the scenario of the employee's baby due date on 5th of May. employee starts her maternity on 1st of May, I used the payment as we earlier on presented the first scenario of employees' payment, Emily's payment, to calculate this. You can see quite clearly from here, the average weekly is 375. And when it should be, you can tell how many days in May: 7th May, 14th May, 21st May, 28th May, and that's 4 weeks. How many weeks in June is 4th and 11th, 18th, and 25th, and then therefore it's 5 weeks in July. And the employees, how many weeks total? This is 39 weeks total, and HMRC's calculation will give you exactly how much the statutory maternity pay total is, 7040. This obviously is not included with the company top-up. And like I say earlier on, if in Emily's case, this is the first scenario. If in Emily's case, the third scenario, employee received 5,000 bonus pay, and employees 90% is higher, and your company top-up is less than employees 90%, then that's so be it. Employee have to receive the higher amount. Okay, let's now go to the next page, is the benefit and salary sacrifice. Let's have a look at benefit and salary sacrifice. This course, today's webinar, actually is being requested when we had a lot of questions, different company asking about employees' benefits during maternity and the salary sacrifice. Can we deduct the salary sacrifice from employees' maternity, statutory maternity pay? So here we want to say is employees are entitled to normal contractual terms and conditions during ordinary and additional maternity leave. This means they are entitled to continue their, normal benefits. Like the most common one is the car allowance. Most common one is different allowance. And if employee opted into the salary sacrifice pension schemes and childcare vouchers, things like that. Particularly for salary sacrifice, we want to mention here, salary sacrifice, the pension schemes, you cannot deduct any salary sacrifice amount from statutory maternity pay. Based on this, employees, the statutory maternity must be paid in full, and statutory maternity pay cannot be sacrificed and offset against other benefits. And all non-paid contractual benefit must continue during statutory maternity pay. This means if employees, say the first 6 weeks, for example, employee have top-up, not only the 90% have top-up, or even the top-up lasts for 18 weeks or something. If the top-up amount is enough to cover employees' maternity, during maternity, the pension amount, you can deduct pension from that top-up amount. If it's not enough, employer will have to use the amount to not deduct from employee, but employer have to pay. If you look at the next page, I presented some example here to say, same employee, we say Emily has salary sacrifice pension, 5% of employees, which is £75 per month based on her salary, and 8% hers is normally £120 per month. And she also has CCV of childcare, the voucher of £100 per month. There's no company top-up to just make the scenario more clear. It's not top-up. During her maternity pay period, the employee's pension for May will be 5% based on the 4 weeks statutory maternity pay, which is £67.50. During the employee's maternity pay period, the employee's pension remains based on the maternity pay figure, employers would be the same as employee was for salary amount. So here we say 5%, it won't be £75, it's £67.50 with the amount 1350 times 5%. This amount cannot be deducted from Emily's SMP following HMC legislation, and it is a benefit to employee, and so the employer must ensure the employee does not lose out during statutory maternity pay. I say unless employee requests to stop in writing. Some employee, before they start maternity pay, they say, no, I want every money. I don't want to have pension during my maternity. If they request to stop, obviously they can stop. But if they not, the employer will need to bear the cost and continue employee's pension contribution. Employer's pension of 8% will be based on employee's normal salary prior employee's statutory maternity pay. So the contribution of 120 per month would continue, which makes employer's pension for the month of May to be 187, which is employee's maternity pay plus employer's maternity pay need to be paid over as pension contribution. I say 67.50. If employee receive 5 weeks maternity, this figure will change. However, that figure change, employee will need to pay from employer's contribution. Not only that, since CCV is also a salary sacrifice item, it cannot be deducted from statutory maternity pay and will have to continue during SMP period. The employer would need to bear the cost and make CCV payment each month during employee's maternity pay period. This is a burden to employer. However, this is salary sacrifice rule set up. A lot of companies now have the contract to employee to say during your maternity pay and the salary sacrifice pension will alter to the net deduction. If that's the case, employee signs the contract, then the pension can be deducted from employee's net pay, which is maternity pay, less tax, less NI, and then less pension. If this is in writing in employee's contract, you can do as alternative. On the other hand, is this employee example here, don't have the company top up. But if you have company top up, you can deduct pension from the company top up amount. Consider if it's enough, if it's in this case, if it's greater than £67 or 5 weeks 5 weeks pension, whatever the amount. So now let's have a look at next page. For the Alabaster ruling, it's a common knowledge for payroll, but not so common knowledge for a lot of HR people and, for some, probably even some new to payroll. Alabaster ruling is set up for the average calc must take into account to pay rise awarded or which would have been awarded to an employee had she not been on maternity leave. This generally applies to the standard salary increase. Say your company has salary increase of everybody get 1% or 3%, 5%, however the percentage is. Employee who is on maternity leave cannot be excluded from this mass salary increase. Then employee is entitled to it. If the pay rise falls between the start of the relevant period for calculating maternity to the end of the maternity leave, which means from employees, the relevant period of calculating from the qualifying pay period till the end of maternity leave, if the salary increase happens during this time, which is over a year, and if your company have standard salary increase, employees should receive it. the payroll, say employee received salary increase, the payroll will have to recalculate employees' 90% average earning, not by what they actually received, but by this increased salary. Say for Emily's case, employees' monthly payment is $1,500, including overtime 1,750. But if employees now from 18,000 annual salary, employees now new salary increased to 20,000, then this amount will have to be, the increased amount will have to be, instead of the whatever employees 1,500, the increased salary is 1666.67. Then employees 90% will be based on this increased salary, not by 1,500. And the 90% difference will need to be paid whenever this happens, say on month 3 of employees' maternity pay. This amount difference will need to be paid to employee. The calculation, say if employee not just received basic salary, employee received, overtime, employee received a bonus, employee received whatever, the calculation can be applied only to the salary, including the percentage of employees overtime, don't apply to the 5,000 bonus, or be percentage, employee receive 1%, then employees average recalculate based on whatever the percent employees increase. It's entirely on the company policy. There's no standard rule have to be on this, as long as employees' increased salary is reflected. So now we go for the next page. I have said so much, so many. So hopefully, for a lot of people, you might know most of it. For some people, the familiar with a lot of it, something new or anything. But like I say, Amy will send this recording after, and you can refer back. And now it's your question time.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. Wow, that was a lot of talking. You'll be ready for a cup of tea after all of that.
I'm sure.
And we've and we've managed to do it in time as well, which is even more impressive. So we've still got 10 minutes for some questions. I think we've had lots through. We've had someone asking, Yvonne asked if we would be covering shared parental leave. We did talk about that, but it was a bit too much to squeeze in. So I think if there's demand for it, we'd cover that as a separate session at some point. Do you agree, Fiona? It's probably a bit much to squeeze in as well.
Yeah, definitely. The shared parental leave, basically, the more involved with today is employee cannot start shared parental leave for at least 2 weeks after baby born, or 4 weeks if this factory working. This is to protect the mother's rights to have a break. Obviously, the shared parental leave can be taken separately and can be taken together, but that's, generally, the rule is here, but we don't have time to go to great details of it today.
Yeah. But yeah, we could potentially do something separate on that. So we'll come back to you on that one. So Ruby asked a question. We have an employee who's being made redundant in May 2022. She is pregnant and the baby's due in July 2022. So is the SMP payable with the redundancy payment? How does that work?
Because employees, did you say employees redundant in May and
Yes.
And baby due in July? So because now it's all about the qualifying pay period, we talk about for employees baby due date in July back to, I would say, 15 weeks. That would be in May or April time. And then employees have earnings for, say, March and April, or February and March. If employees' qualifying pay period was with the employment, employees entitled to statutory maternity pay. So you will need to give employee the statutory redundancy package and the whole lot of maternity pay. A lot of companies choose not do that. They will keep employee on the employment, pay every month to employee. But if you have no other choice but let employee go, you have to pay the whole lot in one go.
Yeah. A question from Joanna. So she says, one of our employees has handed in her notice during her maternity leave. Will she then lose her last couple of weeks of maternity pay, or should they be paying it out as a lump sum?
They should be paid out as a lump sum. Employee statutory maternity pay rights is not affected, although employee want to leave. That only means employees, won't return to work to this place, and you still obliged to pay employee statutory pay at this point. If employee don't want to wait, say employees maternity pay period finish in July, employee resign in May, and then employee saying, no, I don't want to, every month to receive this payment. In May, you will have to pay the remaining amount in one go to employee.
Yeah, okay. A question from Axel. Can an employee who has two jobs claim SMP from two employers? She is working on 0 hour on one job, but full-time on another.
This is based on employees' pay. It's not about the if employees' pay in both jobs is earned above £120 and the employee is entitled to maternity pay, then so be it. Both places need to pay employees statutory maternity pay. This is entirely based on employees' length of service. And length of service is like we mentioned before. Employee have to be in the job at least 41 weeks before the maternity, pay starts. And so employee, if he be employed for this length of time and the employee is earned over £120 a week, then employee is entitled to it.
Yeah, okay. A question from Diane. What if the person has had a pay rise after the qualifying month's pay?
This is within the period we're talking about, is it? So employees entitled to 90% to be recalculated. The period we mentioned, if you go back a few slides, Amy, is from the qualifying pay period. One slide further.
Is it this one?
Go back. I think it's page 25.
Oh, right. I've gone too far. Apologies.
No,
no, that's not right.
Alabaster. Sorry, it's 29 Alabaster, one page before this.
Oh, sorry. I went way too far. Sorry.
It's all right. The Alabaster rule, if you see the pay period is from employees. The ruling, let me see the exactly words, consider any payroll recount. If the pay rise, if the pay rise falls between the start of the relevant period of calculating, which is a qualifying pay period, to the end of her statutory maternity leave, which is 52 weeks after employee start. So if it's falling between this period, employees' average earning will have to use the increased amount rather than the actual amount. So yeah.
So a question from Sheila. If you payroll your benefit in kind for PAYE purposes, what happens during any period of unpaid maternity pay? Unpaid maternity leave, i.e. after SMP has finished?
Say that question again. I'm not quite understand it.
So if you payroll your benefit in kind for PAYE purposes, what happens during any period of unpaid maternity leave? So after the SMP has finished.
During the maternity pay finished, which is 39 weeks, till employee come back to work, which is 52 weeks, the 13 weeks, employer don't have to pay employee's pension. It's only during statutory maternity pay period, the 39 weeks.
Yes, okay. So what happens, this is from Joanna, what happens if the employee decides to stop or reduce their pension contributions for the entire or part of their maternity leave? Does this affect the company's obligation?
it can be if employees, like I say, employee want to stop, reduce, or whatever, this will also affect employers. Say employee want to reduce to 5%, employers normally accordingly, if employee 5%, employers 8%. But if employee reduce to 3%, some company employer therefore is 5%, then you act accordingly. Although the employer's contribution amount is based on employees' actual salary rather than statutory maternity pay. Employees' amount is based on the statutory maternity pay, though.
Yes, okay. Right, what time are we on? I think we've got 5 more minutes, so we've probably got time for a few more, if that's all right with you, Fiona. I know you'll be
Yeah, that's
definitely ready for that brew. Okay, so Catherine has asked, if an employee continues to receive a car allowance during maternity leave, can a pension salary sacrifice be deducted from that element of pay?
no, because the employee's car allowance is the employee's benefit, which should not be affected by the employee go on maternity leave. So if it's 400, you still have to pay 400. You know, if it's 500, you still need to continue. This is employees' rights.
Yes, okay. A few questions about, I guess, pay increases during these periods. So Carol's asked, if a pay increase is awarded after the qualifying pay period, do you still have to recalculate the whole period or from the date the pay increase is awarded?
Yeah, this is back to the pay
Yeah.
period. Thinking about the qualifying pay period, it's it's 2 months or 8 weeks prior to 15 weeks. So that means 8 plus 15, this itself is 23 weeks before employees, baby due date. So that's 23 weeks till employee start maternity, till baby due, that 52 weeks or however long or short that is. If the pay increase happen in this period, you have to instead use the increased salary. So when you say 2 months, 3 months, you need to look at this broad, how long this it is. Employees have the salary increase. Employees 90% will be increased, although it's only for the 6 weeks, for the first 6 weeks of 90%.
Okie doke. A bit of an interesting one from Sharon. Do you know how SMP is calculated for annual directors who have a payment in March only?
That is a very,
Mm.
if employee is paid annually, then we use annual salary. Remember the 2 months, remember monthly paid employee, you need to use the annual salary divided 52 weeks to get the weekly figure and therefore to get the 90%. Because it's always need to get down to the 90%. Although in the related qualifying pay period, employee did not have payment, but because employees pay frequent is paid annually, you will have to use the annual amount instead of look at that two relevant pay period.
Yeah, okay. A question from Vicky. If CCV was not contractual, would the employer still have to bear the CCV cost?
CCV is contractual, is because childcare, the vouchers is salary sacrifice. If your company take that childcare voucher to employee, means you agreed with inland revenue. This is salary sacrifice. So that is contractual once employee is taking on. Although CCV has ceased since 2018, there's no more intake anymore. It's only the existing ones continue. So if employees taking on it, you cannot override it. That is salary sacrifice element.
Yeah. We've had a few questions asking if the slides will be sent out, which they will be. So I will send those out later today, along with the recording of today's webinar. And I'll also send the recording of the maternity leave webinar that we held recently as well, because I'm sure some of you will be interested in that if you missed it. I'm going to wrap things up because I think it's bang on 11 o'clock. A big thank you to Fiona. That was great. Thank you so much. lots covered, lots of detail. So that was fabulous. Thank you. Before I go, I will just point everybody to the Knowledge Centre on our website. It's packed with lots of helpful information, guides, blogs, past webinars, upcoming webinars. So take a look in there. Everything's free to download and written and created by our in-house payroll and HR experts. And that's everything for today. As mentioned, I'll be sending the recording and the slides later today, so look out for those in your inbox. And another big final thank you to Fiona for hosting today's webinar, and hope you have a good day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.